going to die, are aware of the fact that we're going to die, don't have any idea what happens after that, if anything does.
Yeah.
And it's like, everyone's in that situation, and everyone's coping with that situation. And then on top of that, you have like these other things that maybe aren't as fucking fundamental and basic, but are like, you know, the sheer complexity of people's social relationships they have with people around them. It's like that alone determines so much of what you might want to spending your time doing. Like,
of course, the situation that you were brought up in. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you were brought up in any other life, you would have been different, you know?
You get born into something that has so much momentum behind it, and you just kind of get swept away by the current. And this is something I think that, like, I've been kind of, like, loosely just dropping psychedelics and psychedelic use, but like, I think
oh my god. What? I didn't know that.
The guy who recorded our album in Cleveland, he was freaked out by psychedelics.
No way.
Yeah, he was just
straight
like, you guys do psychs.
What?
Yeah, no, he wasn't straight edge at all. He did all sorts of other drugs, but
oh, it was just that brand of drugs.
Yeah, he wasn't into psychedelics.
Maybe you've seen. See, this is why I worry about getting older. Is you start to see more walks of life naturally as you get older. You're going to see more people unless you stay in the same small town. Unfortunate for those people, and still in the same case, you're still getting new people, the newborns. They just see the same thing over and over again. But as you have more life experience, you see more crap.
Oh yeah.
So like
every day, it's going to be a new thing you see that you haven't seen before. Like.
Yeah, if you actually go out of your house in your car.
That's why I love doing contract work so much.
Oh,
it's amazing.
It's not boring.
No,
that's
not
the great
at all.
thing. You're always in a new place, and there's always a job, and you can see the percentage that's being done. It's very satisfying.
Oh, it's super satisfying, man, for sure. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, I can't remember what I was going to say now. What were we just talking about?
What were we just talking about? I feel like you said the word percentages.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was about the contract work. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know. Psychedelics. Holy shit.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Stuff. That crazy shit.
Yeah, that guy was doing psychedelics. Yeah.
Anyways, one of the things I think is crazy about them, and it's crazy about cultures that make it a point to use them. Like most noteworthy is probably the tribes in the Amazon that use ayahuasca.
Right.
And it's like they make a point to do it. That culture is just going to be completely different than a culture that's like obsessed with alcohol or something, But it's the capacity for the psychedelic experience to break you out of that momentum that you're in your life, and you just suddenly like. I think Joe Rogan said it in one of his recent podcasts. He said, the first time I did mushrooms, the first time I really saw myself. Yeah. And that hit me so hard because it's exactly what I felt like happened to me. It's just like, oh my God, I just had such a clear vision of what was happening. Like, the situation.
It just seems big picture.
Yeah.
It's just this huge, all of a sudden you just feel yourself as a part of everything. You're just like, oh man, I'm made of the same stuff as everything. I'm just like the carpet. I'm just like you. I'm just like this. I'm just a part of this. I'm not just separate. This isn't this crazy weird thing that's going on. Just me. We're all just looking at this from different eyes. That's it. You're looking at it from those eyes. I'm looking at it from this eyes. We're all just looking at the same thing, different point of view. That's why we have different points of view. Well, what did you see growing up? And that was what I was going to say with that other guy. Maybe he had seen someone in his life that had a bad psychedelic experience. Yeah. And talked bad about it. Or, as I know, another friend of mine had a friend that went to the mental hospital because he did. On a mushroom trip, he collapsed. Yeah. He went to the mental hospital, never really came out, never was really the same. So, like, depends on that person's point of view. I mean, maybe it was a pre-existing.
Well, I wonder about I definitely don't think, I would never say anything like everyone should be doing psychedelics.
No, I think at a time you might have.
I definitely at a time. Yeah. Well, like, especially when it first happened to me. I was like, what?
You guys haven't... I know, I was so excited. Yeah. And, like, to tell people, and they would just be like, okay, Kyrk, I don't know about the drugs. Like, things are getting to you.
That's exactly what I had, man.
No, man, this is what I'm telling you. This is an experience just like having a beer for the first time. I'm telling you, beer's good. Like I'm saying, I tried it. It was great. Okay, like... Yeah. This is how it felt. Like, I can tell you...
You're giving an objective account of what happened when you ingested a substance.
And the other thing is I use this example with my brothers all the time because I love my brothers to death. And I want them to have these great experiences. And I can tell you all day that there's people starving in Africa. And that hits you in the head. It hits you in your brain and you process that information. It's information, right? Statistic. Mm-hmm. But until you go to Africa and you see those starving kids, you don't feel it. And when you're standing there in front of those starving kids, you feel it. And that's what I think about with psychedelics, because this is why you can have such strong feelings about people starving in Africa, because you can feel it. It's not just information. With psychedelics, I can tell you that you're just as much a part of everything as anything that matters. You know, all world's made of matter. But until you feel it, it's not going to change your life.
Exactly.
It's just information. It's like, yeah, I know I'm a part of everything. Whatever. That's all just floating around here.
Well, the whole time you're just hearing stories about what it's like to go to Japan,
and then you go and you feel it. And
yeah.
And it could be a feeling. That's what I...
Well, it's a subjective experience.
Yeah.
It's not like... And you have to have your own, because... Like, man, before, I had all sorts of crazy ideas about, like, what doing mushrooms would be like. You know, and then when I
didn't
did
think about it too much.
It was, I thought about it a lot. Well, I remember when I was a little kid, I was in, like, grade 5, and they were doing a DARE program to us all. And they were doing
I just thought it was, like, trippy, fun time. Like, you got to see things.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too, yeah.
Oh.
And I thought I would just see, like, sharks floating in the air or something, you know?
Purple elephants.
Like, weird dreams, yeah. And, but I remember being a kid and, like, hearing about certain drugs, like, that you would do these things and it would make you see things that aren't there and everything, and I was just like, shit, if it wasn't for all these, like, really negative consequences, I would do that shit all the time. That sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
And then it turned out some of them don't have any negative consequences, and I was like, turns out I do them all the time, but...
Well, I think some of them do have negative consequences. I just think that you have a good enough head on your shoulders to be able to control that. And some people get out of hand with anything. That's the problem, though. It's just bad moral compass. I don't know if bad compass in general to abuse the drugs. I find that happens so much. People just abusing.
Well, yeah, because especially with the psychedelic, there's definitely like a euphoric quality to it that happens. Yeah. As much as there's like treacherous terrain, that's kind of like, well, you know, there just might be treacherous terrain within you that you haven't really like gone off and explored.
That's what you were trying to.
Yeah, I was trying to explain earlier.
Yeah.
Off air is like, because I talk to people who are afraid of it, and it's like I'm afraid of it too, man. Like, it's not that it's you gotta get it out of your head that it's for your enjoyment. It's if you're lucky, you know, you're gonna have like that euphoric experience. But it felt like to me like the euphoric experience wasn't just a chemical reaction, and exclusively with mushrooms, because I feel like LSD is a little more. It feels like there's just a chemical interacting with me, but with mushrooms, it feels like completely otherworldly. Feels like I'm interacting with some sort of intelligent thing that's teaching me something, like, and that's just an account of the subjective experience that I've had, and so. It was like the euphoria was the result of seeing my own life with such clarity or something, and having these breakthroughs. Like I remember the biggest thing, like
it's almost like the vibrations change, and then it started that information that you knew your whole life starts hitting you.
Yeah. Oh, and you know it because it's like in your body in a weird way.
Chest, yeah. Well, I feel like you have to have the mental state to overcome the sickness of mushrooms. Because I remember the first time I did mushrooms, I felt like I was being poisoned.
You feel sick.
I feel sick, and I'm just like, I've just eaten poisonous mushrooms, and how's this going to turn out?
Yeah.
You know, and you hang in there, and it's great, and you get these waves of euphoria mixed with other
things. With like some real intense introspection that might not be pleasant.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like this is a story that I always tend to tell a lot of because it's probably the most like tangible and relatable. But it was of my second time doing mushrooms, and I like really tried to have a good trip, like a big trip. I did it once, and I felt like, well, I'm standing on the edge of something. I felt like I was like teetering on a cliff, and I was like,
you always feel like that, though.
Yeah. I'm sitting on the roof. I'm feeling it. I definitely jerk in my dreams, like falling a little bit. You know, I feel like I'm falling off the roof. But yeah. So I have. I gotta stop drinking so much when we're doing these.
Oh yeah.
Can't remember what I'm talking about.
Where am
I? So it's the psychedelic trip I was just about to explain was the second one. The first one I felt like I was like there was some crazy depth to this.
That wasn't the time I was at your house. That was
the
first time.
No, that was the second time. First time was when you left at Matt's house.
Oh, that's
Anton
right.
And Dylan.
Yeah,
and so that was the time where I just felt like I was just on some sort of thing, like on the surface of some ocean, you know, like. And so I, the second time, I did it. I was like, I want to fucking dive into that and see what's going on down there.
We had a wild night that night.
That was crazy, man. That's a good night to talk about. This is just one part of it, but I eventually, like, was, after laying on the floor for a while, I just felt, like, compelled to go to my room.
We smoked mushrooms, too, that night.
We smoked them, yeah. We rolled them into a joint.
We ate them and smoked them, which I heard if you get it in your eye, it makes you go blind. So we were like, smoke up.
Yeah.
Don't get the smoke in your eye.
Yeah. It's just what you need to be a little bit paranoid.
I had never heard of smoking mushrooms. Next thing you know, you're doing it. That just seems how it goes.
I don't know if that did anything or not, but
I don't know if it did either, but either way,
we ate them. But I felt like I had to go off in my room, and so I sat up and I was referring to myself in the third person because I was just like so detached.
What are you doing?
I was like, listen, guys, Taran needs to leave. He's got to go to his room. And he's got to deal with some shit, but he's gonna be okay, and he'll be back when he's done. And you guys were just like, all right.
Whatever, we can barely move on
you're just who knows where to, right? Yeah,
We're
least of our problems.
Yeah. See you later.
Who
Next
are you?
thing we know, you're like screaming, yelling, all this stuff. Like,
I fucking lose my mind.
what the hell is going on? We go in and check it. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right.
Man, I was laughing like a fucking maniac. I was rolling around in my bed, just like fucking. It was just like evil, maniacal laughter of some sort. Like,
Yeah,
it was.
It felt like you were. It sounded like you were discovering something, like a little golden chest. Oh yes. Oh, it's mine now. Just like,
Man, because I felt like I felt like I literally understood everying.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I knew.
it's so simple. I'm pretty sure you said that.
It's so simple. Just understood.
It's in the computer. It's so simple.
Fucking, I didn't really dig Zoolander too much.
Oh no, the first one was
I didn't
it.
get through it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
should have just done the first one.
Oh man.
It had a great ending and everything. It was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. It was good. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Anyways, so what I actually meant to talk about was I started really crying on the floor in my bedroom. Like this is before I understood everything.
Yeah.
And I was just,
Before I understood. Yeah.
which was incredibly temporary. I wrote notes to myself too. Saying,
You did.
I wrote down
remember,
saying things like Taran will never understand this.
Yeah.
I kept referring to myself in the third person. I wrote down shit like Taran will never understand this. I'm like the next day just like I don't.
I don't. What is it?
I forgot. But so I was crying at one point. Just like as soon as I got into my room, I just started crying. And I told everyone that I had to go deal with something. And it was just like so intense and like visceral. I was just like convulsing a little bit, even like just crying so hard. And I was like, I didn't really care though, which is the interesting thing. Like I wasn't adverse to the experience I wasn't adverse to it at all. Like I was allowing it to happen, and I just asked myself like, why am I crying so hard? And I just got flashed this image of my biological father, which was like never in my life growing up. And I was on the cusp of doing, like, my first time... Yeah. This was when I was 19 when this happened. So yeah. I was still coming on the end of, like, teenage angst. Just like, he lost his chance to get to know me, that piece of shit. And I really liked pretending like it didn't affect me. And I actually did believe it didn't, you know? Like,
it almost, like, made you macho to say that, you know? Just like, I don't care. I'm a man anyway. I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. And I had a stepdad who was there for sure.
Yeah.
And that was great. But there was definitely, like... And it hit me how there was actually, like, was some real deep, like, connection to my real father, and not having it was definitely harming me. Yeah. And especially the hatred I had for him, because I was painted a rather awful picture of him, and so I just loathed him my whole life. Yeah. Like, I remember just never being without the most deep hatred for somebody.
Well, it's so easy to tell a child that, because children are so delicate in the sense that they teach us in the way that they believe things, you know, the way they think truth and lies work and all these things. It's like so powerful because you can teach them something and they'll believe it. Concrete.
Totally.
This is reality coming from an adult. You know, you were like
adults.
that. So you say, someone tells a kid, you know, this person's not a good person. And you picture the villains in the movies that you hate. You know, they're just like, this is bad. This is what bad is. Bad associated with that. That's bad. And
it was literally the manifestation of evil.
Yeah,
as far as
and you can do
kid,
that.
right?
Yeah, exactly. With a child until you have your own perspective. objective perspective as an adult.
Well, like psychedelics helped give me that too, because I was able to see it for the first time.
That's what I think about when you tell a story, because I think people could have that realization without psychedelics.
I think so too.
And this is what I think's changed in you recently, is that you don't think everyone should have a psychedelic experience, because some, never know what will happen with some people. But before, I remember talking to you and you said everyone should do this.
I was full-blown Terrence McKenna, like mushroom the water
everyone
supply.
Should do this. I definitely think it's a good thing for the right people, but I think people have their own realizations in different things. I think weightlifters probably